Hi everyone, I'm Rincey and this is Rincey Reads. Today I'm going to be doing kind of like a quarterly update with my goals and reading in general. I saw Susie from Read Susie Read do sort of like a quarterly wrap up, and I was kind of basing this off of her, and also Sarah from Mother Effing Books did this whole statistical breakdown of her reading in 2013, and I really like that idea, so I started to do slightly more detailed records in terms of what I'm reading, in terms of author, race, and genre. So I'm just going to be sharing a little bit with you guys and presenting you with pie charts and other nerdy things. So if those things don't really interest you, sorry. So I'm going to start off pretty basic and talk about the gender of the authors that I read. In general, I've always been pretty good at reading an equal amount of men and women authors. In 2010, the split was 55-45. In 2011, it was 58-42, leaning female. In 2012, it was 63% male, which was a little bit unusual, but you know, it happens sometimes. And then in 2013, I sort of flipped that and went 64 female. So, you know, in the end, it all pretty much works out. And so far in 2014, 54% of the books I've read this year have been written by female authors, so doing pretty great with that so far. Now, in terms of race, we all know that my race makeup was pretty abysmal prior to this year. In case you weren't around at the end of last year, I looked at my race breakdown of the authors that I read, and less than 10% in every year have been people of color. So I decided to try to change that. So in 2011 it was 94% white, in 2012 it was 95% white, and then in 2013 it started to get better because that's when I realized what was happening, so I tried harder to read books by people of color. So last year ended up being 83% white, which is, you know, not great, but better. And I'm really excited that so far in 2014, only 54% of the books that I've read this year have been by white authors, which is really fantastic. I'm finding that now that I'm actually making a concerted effort to find authors who are people of color and to read their books, it actually really isn't that difficult. It isn't like I'm reading books that I don't enjoy. And yes, I might have to put in slightly more effort than maybe I have in the past, but really it's all working out in my favor since I really like the books. And then something that I just started doing recently that I haven't been really paying attention to before was the genre breakdown of the books that I read. Now, genre breakdown is really complicated because it's really hard to say sometimes what genres the books that I read fall into. Sometimes they fall into multiple genres. Sometimes I had to make very basic categorizations. For example, I categorize all the YA and kids books together, whether or not they are realistic fiction or paranormal or horror, anything like that. They all just fall under the YA subgroup. Same thing with graphic novels. Some of the graphic novels I read could technically be like historical fiction or even nonfiction. All of those just fall into the graphic novel genre. So in 2010, a significant portion of the books that I read were actually nonfiction, which was really surprising for me to see, especially since lately I haven't been reading as much nonfiction. It was really nice to see that there was a point in time that I was reading a lot of nonfiction. In 2011, the big slices were YA and fiction, which really isn't that surprising to me. 2012, YA took up an even bigger slice of my pie, and I also read a lot of classics and mysteries that year apparently. And in 2013, I read a lot of YA and fiction again, but I also read a decent amount of like nonfiction. So I was okay with the way that my pie broke down, but I wasn't super happy about it. This is the way my pie is breaking down so far in 2014. I seem to be pretty evenly picking from across genres, which is something that I like to do, so I'm really happy to see that statistically it's actually breaking down that way. The one downside that I'm seeing is, one, I am not reading any classics, or at least I haven't read any classics so far this year, and I would like to change that. And two, my nonfiction is rather small. As you guys know, I haven't read very much nonfiction, even though one of my New Year's resolutions was to read one nonfiction book a month. So I need to get on that. I have plenty of nonfiction, I own it. I just haven't been reading it, so I need to work on that. Also, the graphic novel section is significantly larger than it has been in the past because I am trying to read more graphic novels, at least one per month, so that is definitely going to be a big chunk of the pie this year, which I am perfectly okay with because this is a genre that I dipped into a little bit previously, but I didn't do a lot of reading in, so I'm very, very excited because there are so many good graphic novels that I'm discovering, especially because of BookTube. So yeah, that's like a little quarterly update in terms of my reading so far this year. I think it's really interesting to just look at these things every now and then and not just look at it at, say, the end of the year, because a lot of times we just make these sort of resolutions and then we ignore them until the end of the year, and then we're like, oh yeah, I made that New Year's resolution. So it's really good to just do these sort of check-ins. In terms of my other New Year's resolutions, I am way ahead of schedule for the 50 book challenge. Graphic novels are definitely helping with that. I'm currently 4 books ahead of schedule, so I'm not really worried about that. Again, I also just use the 50 book challenge as just a way of me measuring how much I read or how many books I read per year. I don't really use that as any sort of goal, so if I hit it, great. If I don't, fine, I don't really care. And in terms of Mount TBR, I am perfectly on schedule, which is something I forgot to mention in my March wrap-up. I'm supposed to have 9 books finished by the end of March, and I'm currently at 9 books. Of course, this means I need to make sure I keep up with my reading, and I'm reading more Mount TBR books. So yeah, that's all I wanted to share with you guys today. Feel free to leave comments down below letting me know how you guys are doing with your reading this year. Do you find yourself leaning towards one genre or another? If you made any resolutions, how are you doing on them? So yeah, that's all I have for now, and thanks for watching.